Good morning. So June 26th, 2004, I was as stunned as anybody was. I've always been a bookish, nerdy type. Hung out in the library, like those are most of my memories from college, just hanging out in the library. I know it's surprising to a lot of you, that's what I did. So June 26, 2004, I'm as stunned as everybody else when Aaron Kathleen McGinty of Columbus, Indiana said, "I do." And it was to me. So I got married. I know who that one was. I could hear that. Got married in a beautiful church, her hometown. We're 21 and 23 years old and couldn't have possibly had any idea what we were getting ourselves into with this thing called marriage. I don't know if any of us really know before we get married. And so we're excited. Always be one of the defining days of our lives. This is our dance afterward. Great thing about weddings, they're about new beginnings. They're about new love. They're about a new life together. They're about a new journey that two people are going to take. And that's what it was about in our lives. But I have this distinct memory of after the ceremony's over, after the reception's over, and we're walking to the car, and we're going to head out. First time as a couple. We're heading out on the honeymoon, and our parents are kind of in the background. And I had this overwhelming sense that not only is this a new beginning, but for whatever reason, it just hadn't struck me until this point, something is also ending. There's an ending amidst the goodness of a beginning. Something significant was ending, and we're launching into this new life, but this is a reality, and honestly, I had the thought, and I remember having the thought, and it was overwhelming, that it happened. I grew up. I didn't expect this one. I grew up. And moving ahead is leaving something behind. And life is now full of all this goodness that the day represents, but it's now full of all these responsibilities and these decisions that I'm going to have to make and all that stuff, whatever it is that adults do. 15 years in, by the way, I'm still figuring that one out. Anybody with me? Yeah? So I get in the car, Aaron's smiling, it's beautiful. The thought passes quickly. But still, a significant part of the day was a realization that beginnings rely on endings. And in fact, there's an old ancient Roman poet who says this. This was actually in a song in the end of the 90s, but it comes from a poet called Seneca. It says, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." And we all have times in our life where that's just really clear to us. You have times that's really clear to you. Endings are very, very real, but they launch new beginnings. But that can be a confusing place to be, everybody. Sitting at this juncture between something that's ending and something that's beginning. It could be a difficult place to be. We're processing what came before, and we're moving ahead by necessity into a new reality. Why is that so difficult? Why is that such a difficult place to be? Well, because maybe we're not ready for something to end. Anybody ever just not been ready for something to end? Maybe we're just not ready for that. We're just not prepared for that. Or we just don't see how God can actually bring a new beginning at this point. Or maybe we're so wrapped up in what came before, we just don't even see that something has come to an end. So those are difficult spaces to be, sitting at that junction between something that's ended and something that's a new beginning. That's where I want us to live in this story this morning. I want us to live at that juncture in our stories this morning, in between spaces where we all have to let go of the past because a season has ended so we can step forward and move into the future. And this applies to all of us. And actually, I'm not here to depress you this morning. There's nothing wrong with this. These are not bad places to be. But it's amazing when you really begin to think about it this way, how much of our lives are lived in that place, in that space. Can anybody affirm that? A lot of our lives are lived in that place. We're moving out of high school. into the workforce, into college, whatever it is. That's an in-between place. So we're moving out of college into the workforce. And suddenly this world that seemed relatively controlled and manageable, suddenly there's just a whole world out there, right? It's a whole world out there. Or we're become an empty nester. And we see that phase. Parenting never ends, I would assume. I get it. My oldest is 13. I'm not exactly an authority. But parenting never ends. But that more intense part, when the kids are young, that has come to a close. Or you move into retirement, or a new job, or a new location, or a new reality with your health. Those all sit at that juncture. That's where I want us to live. That's where I want us to be this morning. And for Ruth, we're going to see it's actually the loss of her husband. And with it, that's a loss of a person, a personal relationship. That's difficult enough. But all the hopes and the dreams and all those things that are wrapped up in that relationship are suddenly gone. And we're going to see Ruth decides voluntarily, not only is there that ending in her life, but she's also choosing to move past just these deeply rooted parts of her identity, who she is, her national identity, her religious identity. She's moving out of that. Really significant beginnings. Beginnings, endings. So we're going to live in this space with her this morning. We're going to be on the road. It's a literal road that she's on in the story. We're going to see how she responds. And we're going to see the character that comes through and the loyalty that comes through. It's amazing. This is a fascinating story. The commitment that comes through. And you watch her and you think, how in the world was she able to do this? At the time, she doesn't even know Yahweh. She doesn't even know God. Now, I believe there's really strong reason to think God was working on her. God was already with her, even if she's a Moabite and she's worshiping other gods. But at this point, she doesn't explicitly know Yahweh. And we're going to continue to see this theme of God at work in the ordinary. God at work in the seemingly small things in life. Did anybody have a chance to think about that this week? How God's at work in the mundane. He's at work in the things that seem small in your life, the personal interactions you have with other people. It's part of what this book's all about. So let's dig in. Let's look at chapter 1. We're covering chapter 1 today. Next week, by the way, we have a guest speaker coming, one of our presbyters, Dave Rodriguez. He's just written a book on calling. It looks really fantastic. I'm going to read it this week. He's going to be with us. He's going to bring copies of his book, and he's going to share. So it's going to be fantastic. And then the next 3 weeks, we'll cover the other 3 chapters of the book of Ruth, all right? And that's the plan. But this one starts like this. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Remember, there's this family, and they've gone to Moab because there's a famine in Judah. And so they have to be able to find food, they have to go. Things do not go well for this family in Moab. So the husband dies, Naomi's husband dies, and she was left with her 2 sons, and they marry Moabite woman, one named Orpah. I'm going to say Oprah at this point, so let's just get it out of the way. I'm going to say Orpah, and the other Ruth. After they lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion, husbands of the 2 women, sons of Naomi, they also died. So there's Naomi, left in Moab. By the way, if you remember from last week, Moab is Moab buddies with Israel? No, it's kind of the opposite of that. There's a feud between them. So that's where she goes. She goes to Moab. Now she's without her husband and her 2 sons, and she's there with her daughters-in-law. And so when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people back home by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. By the way, there's no reason to think. I looked into this past week, and there is no reason to think they had to do this. They didn't have to do this. It's likely there's some out of respect for their husbands who have passed away, but you get a little insight into what their relationship with Naomi must have been like. And it's not a sort of cranky, contentious daughter-mother-in-law relationship. Not that any of those exist. But it's not one of those. So they're going in large part, maybe out of respect to their husbands to some extent, but they're going out of large part. They really love Naomi. She's really been good to them. In fact, it's probably not going too far to say she's been like a mother to them. So happy Mother's Day, Naomi. She's been like a mother to them. So they were prepared to return home. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place she'd been living in Moab and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. So we learn God's been gracious. God always takes care of his people. That's what's happened back home. Conditions have changed. Things have changed. And they're on this road now. And it foreshadows. It kind of gives you a heads up. Something's going to change. Something in their fortunes are going to change. Something in the just so happens where God's actually at work is going to change for them. So verse 8, then Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, go back. Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. Now, typically they would have said father's home. Mother's home, this is the fact that she says mother's home is signifying that she's saying, go find another husband. Because it was actually in the mother's room. Like, I don't get this custom. Like, it's completely foreign to us. But evidently, marriages were arranged in the mother's room. So she's actually saying, go back and find another husband who will take care of you. And so may the Lord show kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you find rest in the home of another husband. Now this refrain, may the Lord show you, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord do these things for you. This is language that is a conclusion. She's concluding the relationship. In giving them this blessing, she's saying, this is it, I bless you. It's not a bad conclusion. It's not a parting shot. It's a good conclusion to it. But she's concluding the relationship, all right? She's saying, that's it. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept out loud and said to her, no, we will go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. This is really warm, tender language. I am too old to have another husband. She's getting the obvious out there, all right? Even if there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and they gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? No. All right, that's the idea. Nope. Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you because she believes the Lord has turned his hand against me. At this, they wept out loud again. At this, they wept out loud again. Now, their weeping probably shows that it's not just a protest of what she's saying. It's that they get it. They get that the most sensible, reasonable thing for them to do is not to go be foreigners who are widows in a land that's feuding with their country. Can you imagine that? Can you put yourself in the place of these two women? They get it. The most sensible, reasonable thing for us to do is to go home, find another husband, have the marriage arranged in mom's bedroom, and have a new life. So they're weeping because they get that that's the case. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Now that's the beginning of Ruth. There's an ending happening in Ruth's life. She's leaving Moab, and she's not just leaving a geographical location. It's this deep kind of, she's leaving her culture. She's leaving her people. She's leaving all those places that are familiar to her and have shaped her and have defined her. This is the beginning of it. Ruth clings to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. Go back with her. Peer pressure, you know what that is? Peer pressure, everybody's doing it. Ruth, everybody else, namely Orpah, she's going back. She sees what's sensible. There's even a sense of she's obeying me. She's doing what I say. She's showing respect for what I want. Go back. Go back with her. But then Ruth replied, and I'll tell you what, this is one of the most beautiful portions, not just in the Bible, in all of literature. This is beautiful stuff. If you've never heard of this, I envy you today. If you've never heard this is just beautiful stuff. She says, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Because where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people." This is huge. "And your God will be my God." It's not like religion and the gods didn't matter in Moab. They did. "And your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." If even death separates you and me. When Naomi realized this is hopeless, she realized Ruth is determined to go with her. She stopped urging her. So Ruth's saying what? She's not just saying, "Okay, I'll go with you." Like, somebody's going to, you're heading to Target or Walmart or something. "Oh yeah, I'll go along with you." She's not just saying, "I'll go with you." She's saying, "I will go with you, and I will be with you, and I will be at your side, and I will actually take the culture of your life and make that the culture of my life." And this well, if even death separate us, she's not only committing to being with Naomi in life, but she's saying, and then I'm going to continue to live that life. It's not like when you die, I'm going to head back to Moab. I'm taking on your people. I'm taking on your God. I'm going to stay there. And probably, the speculation is, probably even, I'll be buried in your burial plot with you. That might sound a little presumptuous, but she sees this as a deep commitment to her. I'm taking on everything about your life and making it mine. That's the commitment of loyalty that I'm making to you. It's amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff. She's going to abandon everything she's known for a really uncertain future as a widow in a foreign land, and not just a foreign land, a place where she's highly likely to face prejudice from the people there because she's a Moabite. Because she's a Moabite. She's lost immensely, and now she decisively casts her lot with Naomi. Again, we're seeing God. I told you last week, God haunts every page of this book. God haunts every page of this book. We're seeing this. Naomi's also lost immensely, and now she's being given a daughter-in-law. She's being given something of a new beginning. They don't know where this is going to go. Tremendous to where the book goes. They don't know where it's going to go now, but she's being given something back. And so faith keeps them moving forward on the road to whatever lies next. Even with their dreams gone, even with the agony, even with their stability gone. Now let's talk about endings for us. This is an ending. Does everybody see that? This is an ending for Ruth. She seems full steam ahead. The courage and the bravery. Does it strike you as bravery? Is Ruth brave? Is young Ruth brave? The Moabite? It's amazing. She seems full steam ahead, but this is an ending in her life, very significant, that goes past even the tragedy of losing her husband. That's where she's at. What about us? What about seasons in life that maybe we were really attached to? And they've been our identity, maybe. They've come to define us. Those things maybe we cling to a little bit. Maybe we experience sadness at the thought of them ending. How do we deal with that? Let's get a couple examples on the table. There's things I mentioned before. Let's unpack them a little bit more. What about ending high school? Now, this is my 20-year reunion this week. So I've ended high school. So what about that phase? And maybe you're going into the workforce. You're going into college, or college out into the workforce. That's a really difficult transition, and the world changes dramatically. And for me, at least, and I think for a lot of people, there's always a temptation to look back on that time with an undue kind of nostalgia. And I'll tell you what, whenever my wife knows this, and I guarantee she'll be smiling in the booth, whenever I'm really stressed out, I've had a stressful meeting or whatever it is, you will find me sitting in the kitchen, probably on the floor, listening to 90s grunge music. I kid you not. Not because I just like it, not because I'm like, that's really what I want to hear now, but it emotionally takes me back to a time I felt pretty carefree. This isn't everybody's experience, I get it. I really liked high school. I really enjoyed high school. I felt carefree, free of responsibilities. There's something about clinging to a previous experience. All right, so that's one. How about adjusting to kids growing up? They get a little older. We're just beginning to get a taste of this in our family. We've got a 13-year-old now. She's running lights, for crying out loud. She's running lights today in the service. They get a little, that's right. They get a little older. Or you're becoming an empty nester. And we were with a family recently. This is not a family in the church. Actually, they live in the state up north. They do. We hang out with people like that. They have but actually they're OSU fans now. Their daughter attends OSU, so it's pretty cool. But we're talking to her. Their daughter's 19 years old, and we've got little Anna with us. We're all having dinner. Anna, my daughter, she's 5 years old. She's a little bopper. And she said, the mother says to her 19-year-old daughter, "I wish you were still that age." Because she's watching Anna, and she's bubbly, and she's cute, and the daughter can't wait to get back to campus. She's already talking about the fall and all this stuff. And it was kind of, it was funny, but it was kind of a heartbreaking moment for me. And I couldn't imagine, how did that affect the 19-year-old daughter to hear? And her mother's pretty serious, okay? She's pretty serious. She's not just kidding. And how does that affect her to hear that Mom wishes I was still 5 years old? Nothing she could do about it. It's not like she woke up one morning and says, I'm going to be 19 today, right? Time is relentless. Time is positively relentless on all of us. And how does it affect the mother's ability to parent? And let me tell you this, for all of us, part of the challenge of being parents is learning to shift into the new calling God has on our lives when our kids get older. Does that resonate? Does that challenge anybody? How about that? Part of the calling in our lives is learning how to adjust to a new calling from God as our kids begin to get a little bit older. They enter new phases. Well, that's a difficult space. A difficult juncture between an ending and a beginning. What about, I'm watching parents go through this. That's the age I'm at. What about moving out of a career life into retirement? This has got to be a tough one because two things mixed to make this happen. It's an absolute adoration of youth in our society. The target market is always youth. And if you're not under 25, you need to get on board by being 60 and trying to look like you're 25. That's the choice for you. Or elastic sweatpants or something like that. Like, those are your choices. So, yeah, skinny jeans. Oh, man. Okay. All right, that's another sermon. So there's that. You take that, combine it with, it's such a career-driven society, and you're so defined in terms of your career that I can imagine, I don't know from experience, that could be a really tough in-between space, moving into that. Lots of examples of this. Relationships that end. Bad things that happen, loved ones that pass away, jobs that come to an end. There are all kinds of endings that we face. And our response, here's part of what I really want you to hear, what I want all of us to hear, what I want to hear. Our response to things that end, whether that's clinging to them, denying that it really is an ending, whatever that looks like, those can inhibit, when we react that way, that can inhibit what God has for you next. Because God is working through every moment in your life. Do you believe that? Every moment, every season is a season. Forget about the cult of youth. Forget about this adoration of youth. And this has to sound funny to the youth sitting around here, but hey, let me tell you what, you're gonna blink and you're gonna be pushing 40. That's what's gonna happen. That's what happened to me. I'm a year and a half away. And actually someone on staff who is younger the other day said, "You're that old?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm that old." And so, what's that? Hallelujah's right. Hallelujah's right. So our response can inhibit our launching into the newness that God has for us. And God always has newness. God's always creating. God's always at work. There's not a season of your life that doesn't matter. That's the way it is. So how's Ruth deal with the tragic ending? How's she deal with this ending of her identity in these things? Well, she doesn't forget where she came from. She clearly, come on, she doesn't forget the tragedy she's just been through. And it's not just a chintzy kind of, oh, just get over it. That's not helpful. I don't think any of us would really say that, but we say things that approach that sometimes. She's able to see the next calling. Again, she's a Moabite. She's not even thinking in these terms yet. She comes to know Yahweh. I believe that in the story. But she sees the next calling that's there on her life. She sees the next opportunity to pour value into this world, to care for another person, to show compassion to another person. That's how she reacts. And she reveals a heart that'll sacrifice, that'll be loyal, that'll have patience. It took tremendous patience for Ruth to watch all this work out, all these things we're going to see happen in the book. An ending meant a new beginning for her. Didn't mean forgetting what had come before, but it meant a new beginning. It wasn't her choosing, it wasn't what she desired, losing her husband. But she found a place of calling. She found a place where God is always at work, and there's value to be added to the world. So I want to say, what about us? What about us? What does it look like for us to have the eyes of faith? Remember when we talked about faith? This is a few weeks ago. I love this analogy. This is not mine. I wish this was mine, but it's John Wesley. It says faith is like being given the gift of faith is like being given a light in a dark world. And suddenly you can see everything the way God wants you to see it. You can see the kingdom all around you. When you have eyes of faith, you can see the kingdom all around you. And you can see opportunities for compassion for other people. You can see that God wants to work inside of you and change you from the inside out. That's what faith is. And that gives you hope, because you can see these things. What does it look like for us to have eyes of faith, for us to have this light, this bright, beaming light that God gives us, even amidst the in-between spaces in life, to see the next thing of value? If you're in one of those in-between spaces, and I don't know who's not, you can see the next thing of value that God's probably placed right in front of you. A lot of times we want to look way down the road, or we come to an ending, we think, wow, what am I gonna do now about this, right? And maybe you're Googling all the possibilities. Does anybody do that? Well, Naomi's right there. Naomi's right next to her on the road. I'm telling you, everybody, I have come to believe that's the way God more often than not works. There's something right there, and you don't see it because you're so worried about this spectacular thing God's supposed to do. I can't read everybody's faces. Okay, all right. Well, that's okay. Maybe right in front of us. The first step in having these kind of eyes of faith is to call out an ending for what it is. Call a spade a spade. How about that? You call out an ending for what it is. High school's over. Yes, Spotify has a lot of 90s music. It does. And that's fine. But high school's over. Childhood's over. Parenting is not over. It's entered a new phase. Your career has shifted. It's okay. Because again, God's telling a story in your life that includes every part of your life. I don't know how this is going to sound coming from me, but I want to say it anyway. This is not in my notes. If you're in your late 60s, 70s, 80s, do you believe this? Because it's a cult of youth that says, now you just, kick back and have a lemonade, and because that's it. It's over. I don't believe that. I'm not saying that. Let's be really clear. I don't want anything thrown at me. Let's be really clear. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but do you believe God is telling a story in every season and every phase of your life? Because what is this life if it's not a preparation for, this life matters in and of itself. It matters the things we do. But we're also being prepped for the new journey of eternity. We're all moving towards that. Your life's not going like this, everybody. Your life's going like this. So do you believe that? Do you believe that? So God's involved in the ordinary. He's involved in the mundane. The things you think are ordinary and mundane, they're not ordinary and mundane. Why? Not just because you care about them. Maybe you don't, because God cares about them, and God is involved in them. So can you look? Can you watch? Can you be on the lookout right around you for new callings, new opportunities to add value, new work in the kingdom, because the kingdom's among us. Up there's come down here, and that the spiritual realm now intersects with ours and interacts with ours. The world's haunted in a good way. You ever woken up at 2 a.m. and it's just clear God was saying something to you? The world's haunted in a good way. And so Ruth commits herself to care for Naomi unto death and to live as Naomi lives, even after she has this terrible ending in her husband's death, decides to leave the culture in which she grew up, everything she knew, but she sees an opportunity, even before she knows Yahweh by name, she sees an opportunity to be about Yahweh's work. It can be really easy. I'm going back. This is a little repetitive. I get it. It can be really easy to think, there was a golden era of my life. The golden era of Ryan's life. And it's over, something like that. It defined us. And the future simply cannot be more valuable than the past, because that was what I was really doing. All those great things that I did in high school or college or in this relationship or in that job or in my entire career, that was what I was really doing. It's easy to think about that. It's easy to think that past life mattered more. Let me tell you what, you miss new callings that way. And if God, the creator of the universe, the entire universe, sustainer of all things, is the one calling, then tell me something about the calling that he has on your life. It's important. It's really important. Because of the one who's calling. And if we wish our 19-year-old was 5 years old, we miss the calling to love and support and to care for that 19-year-old who God's telling a story in his or her life. If we wish we were still teenagers or we had this or that job, we miss new callings, because everybody here, everybody has a calling like Ruth had into the life of Naomi. We've got that. God's given that to us. There are people to whom we're called to pour into them, to love them, to support them, to show them compassion. Maybe people's faces are coming to your mind right now. That's great. Pay attention to that. New callings, different than the past, not less important to God. I'm going to tell you, we conclude here, something that's not going to surprise you. The world's full of broken people and broken places. There's never a reason to feel like, I don't have a calling. I don't have a thing to do. I don't have meaning in this world. I don't have something that God wants me to press into. There's never a reason to think that. So can you have eyes to see maybe what's right in front of you? Can you see where the world's pain? Can you see it? This is really key. And I have a strong hunch we're going to hear more about this from our presbyter next week. It's what the book's all about. Can you see where the world's pain, where the world's brokenness intersects with your passions, your gifts, your abilities? That's a place we call calling. That's a place we call calling, where the world's pain, the needs that people have around you. Again, maybe you get visions of the entire world and all these things. Guess what? You're not called to fix the entire world. Now, the church is called to be about the restoration of all things. The church is God's plan. You individually, you're not called. You're called to the people around you. The situations around you, the brokenness around you. Can you see where all of that stuff intersects with your passion, your gifts, your abilities. That's what we call calling. Can you watch for that in the ordinariness, the mundaneness of life? Can you watch for the Naomi who's lost significantly, but your presence, our presence can be her gain. And when you see that, can you respond with love and loyalty and commitment? So Nehemiah 9:6, the whole passage is so cool in chapter 9. It says, "Blessed be your name," talking to God, "and may it be exalted above all blessing and praise. You alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all their starry host." By the way, when's the last time you just got out of the city and looked up at the stars? You can see the stars a little bit in the city. When's the last time you really got out and looked up at the stars? And felt this sense, you might feel this sense of how small you are, and there's truth to that in the universe, but really what hits me is how vast God is, and how amazing He is that in such a vast universe, He's created us to be able to reflect upon that. He's created us to be able to reflect upon that. And we're qualitatively different than the rest of God's creation. You're going to hear people say, no, you're not. There's actually a sign at the zoo, sort of talking about how much DNA we share with the apes and all these things. And that may be true from a biological perspective, but I'll tell you what, Aaron and I got to go to somebody gave us tickets to a Broadway play the other night. It was really fantastic. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is what humans do. We put these sets together and the colors and the lights to entertain one another and to give a message to one another. I mean, that is the image of God playing out in our relationality to one another. I was still reading the passage, wasn't I? Okay, I'm going to go back then. "And all their starry host, the earth and all that's in it, the seas and all that's in them, you give life to everything." This is a continual thing. God gives life to everything. He's breathing life into everything. "And the multitudes of heaven worship you." God's always at work, breathing life, giving life into everything. He's on the move always. It's what this story is about. I'm excited we got 3 more weeks. I'm excited we got 3 more weeks, 3 more chapters of it. Do we have eyes to see this and to join with Him in the work He's about? So Lord, we pray that you would work in our lives and meet us where we are at this morning. And so many of us, we're at this intersection between an ending, but looking for a beginning. And here's what I want to pray, something simple. Give us eyes of faith. Give us a light in the darkness. Give us the ability to see where the world's pain and brokenness intersects with what you've given to us, Pick us up, Lord, when we're down. Pick us up when we're down. Pick us up when the past has hurt us. When we have guilt, give us forgiveness, Lord. May we see a new day and a new calling on our lives. We give it to you. We surrender that to you. We entrust you with the future. And that's no small thing to say, because it's so hard for us. But we know we're not capable. I'm just declaring on behalf of everybody, we're not capable. You are capable. We entrust ourselves to you because of Jesus. Because of Jesus, and in his name, amen.